Part 1. Discovering the enchanted forest in a distant land. Nestled among rolling hills and tall mountains, there was a forest known to few, a forest so tranquil that it held the power to soothe the weary soul. This wasn't a regular forest. It was an enchanted forest, a place where time seemed to slow, where each leaf whispered its ancient secrets, and the air was filled with a deep, almost magical serenity. Lynn, a young woman who had spent most of her life in a bustling city, had heard stories of this forest. It was said that anyone who wandered into its depths would find peace like no other, a peace that could only be discovered when the heart and mind were in perfect harmony. The stories had always fascinated her, especially since she had been struggling with stress and anxiety from her demanding job and fast-paced lifestyle. One evening, with the sun just beginning to dip below the horizon, Lynn decided it was time to leave the noise behind and seek out this legendary forest. She packed a light bag, grabbed a jacket, and set off on the path that would lead her to the forest. As she walked through the city, the familiar sounds of honking cars, chatter, and footsteps on concrete seemed to grow fainter with each step, until they disappeared altogether. The moment Lynn entered the forest, she felt the weight on her shoulders lift. The sounds of the city were replaced by the soft rustling of leaves and the distant call of birds. The air smelled fresh and earthy, as if the very soil beneath her feet was alive with ancient energy. Lynn took a deep breath, inhaling the pure, crisp air, and with each breath, she felt her body relax a little more. The forest was alive in ways that Lynn had never experienced before. The tall trees with their broad, sweeping branches seemed to reach toward the sky, as though they were guardians of this sacred place. The ground beneath her feet was soft, covered in a blanket of fallen leaves that made her steps sound like whispers. Lynn walked slowly, not in any hurry, savoring every moment. She could hear the gentle rustling of the trees as if they were speaking to her, their voices mingling with the occasional birdsong. The deeper she walked into the forest, the more at peace she felt. Her heart, which had been racing all week, slowed to a steady, calm rhythm, and her thoughts, which had been crowded with worries and to-do lists, quieted one by one. After what seemed like hours of walking, Lynn came across a small clearing. In the center of the clearing was a shimmering pond, its surface as smooth as glass. The water reflected the sky above, which was just beginning to turn a soft shade of lavender as the sun set. The stars had begun to peek through the fading light, twinkling faintly in the sky. Lynn approached the pond, her footsteps silent on the soft grass. She crouched down beside the water and gazed into its depths. The surface of the pond was perfectly still, and Lynn could see the reflection of the trees and stars, as if the pond itself was a mirror to the universe. The sight was mesmerizing. It was as though she were looking into a different world, a world of endless calm. Lynn felt an overwhelming sense of peace wash over her. She sat down beside the water, taking off her shoes and dipping her feet into the cool water. The sensation was refreshing, the water flowing gently around her ankles, carrying away the last remnants of tension. As Lynn sat there, she closed her eyes and listened. The only sound was the soft rustling of the trees and the occasional ripple of water as it gently moved around her feet. There was no rushing, no urgency. Time seemed to stand still, and Lynn realized that in this moment, there was nothing she needed to do, nothing to worry about. She was simply here in this peaceful sanctuary, and that was enough. Lynn's breathing deepened as she allowed herself to sink deeper into this tranquility. With every breath, she felt more and more relaxed, her body growing heavy with contentment, She could feel the tension in her shoulders melting away, her muscles unwinding, and her mind growing clearer with each passing moment. She opened her eyes and gazed at the stars above her. The stars seemed so much closer here, as if they were within reach, their light gently illuminating the world around her. Lynn felt a deep connection to everything in this moment. The trees, the water, the stars, and the quiet hum of the earth beneath her feet. In this peaceful place, Lynn felt something shift inside her. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly present. She wasn't thinking about the past or the future. She wasn't concerned about deadlines or expectations. She was simply here, in the now, surrounded by nature's purest form of tranquility. And it felt wonderful. The beginning of mindfulness, the quiet stillness of the forest, encouraged Lynn to let go of her thoughts even more. She shifted her focus to her breath, noticing the gentle rise and fall of her chest with each inhale and exhale. It was as if her breath had become the heartbeat of the forest, slow and steady, full of life. Each breath felt like a connection to the earth, to the trees, to everything that existed in this moment. Lynn had read about mindfulness before, how it could help reduce stress, improve focus, and promote peace, but she had never truly practiced it until now. Sitting by the pond, she could feel herself slipping into a state of deep mindfulness. Her thoughts became distant, almost irrelevant, as she focused solely on the sensations around her, the cool breeze on her skin, the gentle flow of the water, the comforting sound of nature. As she sat there, Lynn felt a sense of deep gratitude. For the forest, it had given her exactly what she needed: peace, stillness, and a chance to reconnect with herself. It was as if the forest had been waiting for her, patiently, offering her the chance to slow down and let go. Lynn stayed by the pond for what felt like hours, allowing herself to fully experience the calmness of the forest. She didn't need to do anything. There was no need for any action. All she had to do was be. It was a simple yet profound realization. In that moment, she understood the true power of mindfulness, living fully in the present moment without any distractions or judgments. The forest, with its timeless beauty, had given Lynn the gift of peace. She knew that whenever life became overwhelming again, she would be able to return to this place, whether in her mind or in her heart, and find the tranquility she needed to restore her sense of balance. Part 2. A journey into the heart of tranquility. Lynn remained by the pond for what felt like an eternity, but in the most peaceful way. The forest, with its deep green canopy and quiet whispers of nature, seemed to wrap around her like a soft, comforting blanket. There was no hurry, no reason to rush. She had discovered something far more valuable than a destination. She had found a sense of peace in the journey itself. As the stars above twinkled more brightly and the cool night air began to settle into her bones, Lynn leaned back against a large stone, letting the weight of her body sink into the earth beneath her. The stone was smooth, almost as if it had been waiting for her to sit, to rest, to simply be. Lynn closed her eyes once more, and with each inhale, she became more attuned to the subtle sounds of the forest, the delicate rustling of leaves in the wind, the soft calls of distant owls, and the gentle croaking of frogs. The entire forest seemed to be breathing with her, as if it too was in a meditative state, sharing its tranquility with her. Each breath felt like a rhythm shared between her and the trees, between her and the earth. She was no longer simply existing. She was present, fully engaged with the world around her. There was no need to think about the past or the future. No need to plan or anticipate. The moment was all that mattered, and in this moment, Lin felt complete. The healing power of silence. The distance, Lin could hear the faint sound of water trickling over rocks, like a gentle melody. Intrigued, she decided to follow the sound, to explore the source of the soft music that seemed to call to her. As she rose from her resting spot, she took one last look at the pond. Its surface, still as glass, reflected the starlit sky perfectly, like a second universe, tranquil and vast. It would always be here, she thought, a place she could return to when needed. With light footsteps, Lin wandered deeper into the forest, following the sound of the water. The trees parted slightly, and she came upon a small creek, its waters clear and sparkling in the moonlight. The creek was surrounded by smooth, moss-covered stones, and the water flowed gently, creating a soothing rhythm that added to the peaceful atmosphere. Lin knelt beside the creek and dipped her fingers into the cool water. She could feel the energy of the creek, its calm, its steadiness, its flow. Each drop of water felt like it was washing away not just the dirt from her fingers, but also the remnants of stress and tension that she had carried with her for so long. It was as though the forest was guiding her, helping her let go of everything that no longer served her. She sat by the creek for a while, letting the sound of the water blend with the gentle rustling of leaves and the occasional owl's hoot. She realized that silence, far from being empty, was actually full of life, full of energy, full of presence. The more she listened, the more she heard the crinkle of a leaf being blown in the wind, the soft crunch of her feet on the earth, the distant sigh of the wind through the trees. It was all part of the symphony of nature, each sound contributing to the peaceful whole. As Lin sat there, she let her mind drift. The creek seemed to draw her attention deeper inward, helping her release the clutter of her thoughts, one by one. Each thought that arose was like a leaf carried away by the current, floating gently downstream, out of sight, out of mind. With each passing moment, she felt lighter, as if the weight of her worries and distractions had dissolved into the water. She was not trying to push away her thoughts. She was simply allowing them to come and go without judgment. This was mindfulness. This was presence. She wasn't running from anything. She wasn't avoiding anything. She was here, fully, in this moment, in this serene world. The light of the moon, as the night deepened, the forest seemed to become even more magical. The moon, full and bright, hung low in the sky, casting its soft silver light over everything. Lin looked up, marveling at how the moonlight danced across the leaves of the trees, creating a dreamlike effect on the ground. The world bathed, and this gentle glow seemed even more peaceful, more still. Lin felt a deep sense of connection to the moon, a bond that went beyond words. There was something timeless about it, something ancient. The moon had witnessed centuries of life, and yet it remained constant, calm, and wise. It was a reminder that all things, whether human or animal, plant or rock, were part of a larger cycle, a vast and beautiful dance that had been happening long before her, and would continue long after her. She stood up and began to walk slowly, her feet light on the ground, her steps in rhythm with the slow, steady pulse of the forest. The path before her seemed to be lit by the moon's glow, guiding her toward a deeper understanding, a deeper connection. Lin had no destination in mind, but she didn't need one. The forest was her guide, and she trusted it completely. She knew that she was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what she needed to do. In this place, she was free. Free from the weight of expectations, free from the noise of the outside world. She was just being a part of the natural flow, a part of the larger rhythm of life. The stillness of the night, Lynn wandered through the forest for what felt like hours. But it wasn't the passing of time that mattered. It was the experience of being fully immersed in the present, in the here and now. The further she walked, the more the forest seemed to wrap around her, enclosing her in a cocoon of peace and stillness. The stillness was profound. It was a silence that was not empty, but full of meaning. It was the silence of the earth breathing, the silence of the stars twinkling in the sky, the silence of the world turning slowly, steadily, quietly. It was the kind of silence that spoke louder than any words could. Lynn stopped for a moment, feeling the cool air on her skin and the earth beneath her feet. She stood still, letting the forest embrace her completely. She felt no need to hurry, no desire to be anywhere other than exactly where she was. In this moment, there was nothing she had to do. There was only the quiet, only the peace, only the serenity of the forest. A deepening peace as Lynn continued her walk. She felt herself becoming more and more attuned to the natural rhythms of the forest. Her heart had slowed, her mind had cleared, and her body had become light, as though she were floating. The more she allowed herself to become part of the forest, the deeper the peace within her grew. She realized that she didn't need anything from the world. She didn't need to search for happiness or chase after peace. It was already here, inside her, inside the forest, inside everything. She simply needed to allow herself to connect, to be present, to let the natural world guide her back to herself. The forest had shown her something invaluable, the importance of being present in the moment. It had reminded her that true peace comes from within, and that all we need to do is stop and listen. The forest was a place where the noise of the world could not reach her, where time could slow down, where the soul could rest as the first light of dawn began to peek over the horizon. Lynn knew that she would return to this magical forest again and again. The lessons she had learned here would stay with her, reminding her to always take a moment to pause, to breathe, and to simply be. Part 3. Embracing the quiet wisdom. As the first light of dawn began to creep across the horizon, Lynn found herself standing at the edge of the forest. She had walked through the night, guided by the moonlight and the soothing rhythm of the earth. Beneath her feet, the air was fresh with the scent of pine and damp earth, a welcome change from the dry, warm atmosphere she had grown accustomed to in the city. She felt renewed, as though the very air around her had purified her thoughts and her spirit. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting its first golden rays across the canopy of the trees, and the forest came to life. Birds began to sing there, sweet songs piercing the stillness of the night that had long since faded. Lynn stood there, absorbing the beauty of the moment, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face and the coolness of the earth still beneath her feet. She closed her eyes, letting the soft light wrap around her, as though the sun itself was offering her a quiet blessing. There was no rush. There was no need to hurry back to the demands of everyday life. In this moment, Lynn was fully immersed in the present, and it felt like all the time in the world was hers to savor. For once, she was not worried about what she needed to do next, or how much time had passed. Time was no longer a ticking clock, but a flowing stream, and she was floating along with it. She slowly made her way deeper into the forest, her feet light on the soft ground. The path was easy to follow now, the trees opening up to reveal more stunning views of the untouched wilderness. A small, crystal-clear stream crossed her path, its water sparkling like diamonds in the early morning light. The sound of the water was gentle and soothing, like a lullaby as it meandered around the rocks and stones, whispering its secrets to anyone who would listen. Lynn knelt beside the stream, dipping her fingers into the cool, refreshing water. The sensation was almost magical, as though each drop of water carried with it a piece of the forest's wisdom, offering it to anyone willing to accept it. She let the water run over her fingers, feeling the flow, the movement, and the stillness. All at once, it reminded her of her own life, how sometimes it seemed chaotic and unmanageable. Yet there was always a deeper current of peace beneath the surface, a current she could tap into if only she allowed herself to trust it. As she sat by the stream, Lynn closed her eyes again, focusing on her breath. She could feel the rhythm of her heartbeat, the rise and fall of her chest, perfectly in sync with the natural rhythm around her. The wind stirred the trees, creating a soft symphony that seemed to vibrate with life, while the stream continued its gentle flow. Everything was interconnected, and for the first time in a long time, Lynn felt herself fully a part of that great, endless web of life. In that moment, Lynn understood that true peace wasn't something to be sought after, nor something that could be found outside of oneself. It was always there, waiting within her, waiting to be discovered. The forest had shown her how to tap into that deep reservoir of peace, how to tune out the distractions of the world, and how to simply be. The wisdom of nature. The hours passed without Lynn even realizing it. Time had no meaning here in the forest, and she had come to appreciate that deeply. There were no clocks, no deadlines, no schedules. The forest existed in a timeless state, where every moment was a gift to be savored. Lynn felt a profound sense of gratitude for this place that had given her so much, and she realized that she had discovered something even more valuable than peace: wisdom. As she continued her walk through the forest, Lynn noticed that the trees, the flowers, the animals, they all seemed to possess a quiet wisdom, an understanding of the natural order of things that was beyond her comprehension. There was no rush in nature, no need to hurry. Everything bloomed in its own time, grew at its own pace, and was content with simply being what it was. Lynn stopped by a tall oak tree, its bark thick and weathered, its roots deep in the earth. She placed a hand on its trunk and closed her eyes, feeling the energy of the tree pulse beneath her fingers. It was as though the tree had been here for centuries, quietly witnessing the passage of time, watching as the world around it changed, yet remaining steadfast and grounded. The oak, she realized, was a perfect example of nature's wisdom. It didn't strive, it didn't rush, it simply was. It grew at its own pace, adapting to the seasons, standing tall through storms, and remaining rooted to the earth. Lynn could learn so much from this oak tree about patience, about resilience, about the quiet strength that came from being fully connected to the earth and to the present moment. As she continued her walk, Lynn reflected on the lessons that forest had taught her. In the hustle and bustle of life, it was easy to forget that peace and wisdom didn't come from striving, from pushing forward, or from seeking success. True peace came from embracing stillness, from allowing life to unfold naturally, from trusting the process. The forest, with all its wisdom, had shown her that sometimes the greatest thing one could do was simply to stop, listen, and allow things to be as they were. The magic of presence, with the sun now fully risen and the light streaming through the trees. Lynn found a quiet spot by a small waterfall, its water cascading gently over the rocks, creating a peaceful, rhythmic sound. The place felt sacred, as though the very earth here held a deep magic, a magic that could heal, restore, and renew. Lynn sat on a smooth stone beside the waterfall, closing her eyes and allowing the sound of the water to wash over her, carrying away any remaining tension in her body. For a long time, she simply sat there, focusing on her breath, on the sound of the water, on the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. She didn't think about anything she didn't need to. She was fully present in this moment, in this space, in this time. There was nothing else but the water, the wind, the forest, and her. And in this sacred stillness, Lynn felt a deep sense of peace. In that moment, Lynn understood the true magic of the forest. It wasn't just the trees, or the water, or the stars. It was the present moment itself, the ability to fully immerse oneself in the now, to let go of everything else, and to experience life as it was, without judgment, without expectation. The magic wasn't in finding the perfect place, but in the simple act of being present. The forest had taught her the most valuable lesson of all, that peace, clarity, and wisdom were always available to her, as long as she was willing to stop, breathe, and be present. Life didn't need to be complicated. The most profound moments of peace came when she simply allowed herself to exist, without striving, without pushing, just being. A new beginning as Lynn made her way back to the edge of the forest. She felt lighter than she had in years. The forest had offered her not just peace, but a new way of being. She knew that life in the city would soon call her back, with its noise and its demands. But now, she carried with her the wisdom of the forest, the wisdom of stillness, of mindfulness, of being present in each moment. She could return to the city, to her busy life, but she would never be the same. The forest had shown her that peace was not something to be found outside of herself. It was within her, always, waiting to be embraced. She had learned how to listen, how to be present, how to find calm in the chaos. And no matter where she went, Lynn knew that the forest would always be there, waiting for her to return, to reconnect, and to remember the magic of the present moment. Part 4. Living the wisdom of the forest. The days following Lynn's time in the forest were filled with the hum of the city, its constant pulse of activity, its noise, and its demands. But something had shifted inside her. The city, with all its speed and noise, no longer felt like an overwhelming force. Instead, it felt like a backdrop, a setting for a new chapter of her life. She carried the stillness of the forest with her, a quiet strength that she could tap into whenever she needed. Lynn's first morning back in the city was unlike any other she had experienced before. The sun shone through the windows of her apartment, casting a warm glow on the wooden floor. The familiar sound of traffic drifted in from the street below, but this time it didn't feel invasive. Instead of feeling tense and rushed, Lynn felt a deep sense of calm within herself. She stood at the window for a moment, taking in the view. The skyline was the same as it had always been: towering buildings, cars moving like ants, people hurrying to their destinations, but somehow it all felt distant. The noise was still there, but it no longer held the same power over her. She felt grounded, as though her feet were still planted firmly in the forest, connected to the earth. As Lynn prepared for her day, she focused on bringing the same mindfulness she had practiced in the forest into each moment. She washed her face slowly, paying attention to the coolness of the water, the way it felt against her skin. She moved deliberately, savoring the simple task of getting ready for the day. The quiet ritual of preparing her breakfast became a meditative act. She chopped vegetables for a salad, the knife slicing through the crisp produce with precision. And with each slice, she felt a deep sense of connection to the present. Lynn took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a moment, and felt the connection to the forest within her, alive and present. She could call upon it at any time, just by being still and aware, just by being present, bringing stillness to every day. Life as Lynn ventured into the city, she found herself walking more slowly, more mindfully than before. The streets, though bustling, felt different to her now. She had learned that no matter how chaotic things seemed, there was always space for peace within. She no longer rushed from one place to another, her footsteps quick and frantic. Instead, she took her time, allowing herself to be fully present with each step. The noise of the city, the chatter of people, the honking of horns, and the clamor of construction work became like a distant hum, a background soundtrack to her life. Lynn smiled to herself, realizing how much she had been affected by these noises in the past, how much they had consumed her thoughts and emotions. Now, they simply existed, and she could choose to tune them out, just as she had learned to tune into the sounds of the forest at work. Lynn approached her tasks with a new sense of calm and clarity. She no longer felt the need to rush through her to-do list, cramming in as much as possible before the day's end. Instead, she allowed herself to focus on one task at a time, giving it her full attention and letting go of any worries about the tasks ahead. She could feel the connection to the forest even as she worked when she focused, truly focused. On the task in front of her, she was practicing the same mindfulness that had helped her find peace in the forest. When things got stressful, as they often did in the busy office, Lynn would close her eyes for a few moments and take a deep breath. She would picture the tranquil pond, the gentle flow of the creek, the stillness of the trees. She could almost hear the water flowing in her mind, soothing her, calming her. With every breath, she felt the tension melt away. The world would continue around her, but she would remain centered, a calm presence amidst the chaos. Finding peace in the chaos one afternoon. While walking through the busy streets of the city, Lynn found herself caught in a crowd. People were moving quickly, pushing past one another, their faces tense as they hurried to their destinations. Normally, this would have felt overwhelming, but today it felt different. Lynn took a deep breath and centered herself. She remembered the way the wind had felt on her face in the forest, how the leaves had swayed gently in the breeze. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, tuning into the sensations around her, the ground beneath her feet, the soft sound of footsteps on the pavement, the distant sounds of conversation, the warmth of the sun on her skin. When she opened her eyes, the crowd no longer felt like a force she had to fight against. It was simply a collection of people, each on their own journey, each with their own thoughts, their own lives. Lynn no longer felt overwhelmed by their pace. Instead, she felt a sense of compassion for them. She understood that they, too, were carrying their own burdens, their own stresses, and that it was okay. It wasn't her job to change the world around her. It was her job to change her relationship to it. She walked calmly through the crowd, feeling as if she were moving through the world with a sense of purpose and serenity. The city, in all its hustle and bustle, no longer had the power to make her feel anxious or stressed. She was grounded, connected to the present moment, and no external force could take that away. A new perspective on life's weeks passed. Lynn's new way of being began to ripple out into all aspects of her life. Her relationships, too, began to shift. She found herself listening more deeply when people spoke to her, truly hearing what they were saying, without rushing to form a response. She practiced patience, knowing that she didn't have to fill every silence with words, and that sometimes the greatest gift she could give was simply being present. Her friends and family noticed a change in her. She was calmer, more patient, more grounded. She was no longer caught up in the rush of life, trying to meet expectations or achieve more. Instead, she was content with where she was, who she was, and the people she was with. Lynn had found a new way of living, one that was rooted in peace, mindfulness, and presence. Every now and then, she would return to the forest, whenever she needed to reconnect with herself and the earth. But even when she wasn't there, she carried the lessons with her. The forest had become a part of her, and she knew that no matter where life took her, she would always have that quiet strength to draw from. Lynn's journey had led her to something far more profound than she had ever imagined, in understanding that peace and happiness weren't things to chase or find. They were always within her, just waiting for her to stop and listen, to be present, and to embrace the simplicity of being. And in that quiet, peaceful presence, Lynn found her true self. Part 5. The flow of life. The days had passed gently, each one unfolding like a soft breeze. Lynn had embraced her new perspective with open arms. She no longer felt the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. Instead, she felt as if she were a leaf drifting gently down a stream, moving with the current rather than against it. Life was still busy, but the way she engaged with it had completely changed. At work, Lynn found herself more focused and present than ever before. The constant demands and deadlines that once felt like a burden no longer fazed her. She had learned how to manage her time with a sense of ease, taking one task at a time and being fully engaged in whatever she was doing. Whether it was drafting an email or attending a meeting, Lynn approached everything with a calm mind and a patient heart. One afternoon, her colleague, Sarah, came over to her desk, visibly stressed. Sarah had been running around all day trying to meet a tight deadline, and it was starting to wear on her. "Lynn, I don't know how you do it," Sarah said, her voice tight with frustration. "How do you stay so calm? I'm about to lose it with all this work piling up." Lynn smiled gently, aware of how familiar Sarah's feelings were. She had once been in that same place, rushing, stressing, feeling like she was drowning in tasks. But now, she knew a different way. It's not about doing everything perfectly or getting everything done at once, Lynn replied. It's about focusing on the present moment and allowing things to unfold naturally. You don't have to solve everything right now. Just take a breath and do the next thing in front of you. Sarah looked at her, confused but intrigued. "So, you're telling me to just ... slow down?" Lynn nodded. "Exactly. When we rush, we miss out on the beauty of the moment. Slow down, breathe, and you'll find that things get done without the stress." Sarah seemed to consider this. "I guess I've been so focused on the finish line that I forgot about the steps to get there." Lynn smiled again. "It's all about the steps. It's all about the journey, not just the destination." A gentle invitation. Lynn had always been a bit of an introvert, someone who found peace in solitude. But with her newfound sense of peace, she began to feel more connected to the people around her. She started reaching out to friends and family more often, inviting them into her life, sharing the peace she had discovered in the forest. One weekend, Lynn invited her older sister, Mai, over for a quiet afternoon. Mai had always been the more energetic one, constantly juggling multiple tasks and rarely finding time to relax. Lynn knew that her sister, like so many people, carried a heavy load of responsibilities that often left her feeling drained. When Mai arrived, Lynn greeted her with a warm hug and led her to the balcony where she had set up a small table with tea and fresh fruit. The view of the city was soft and calm in the late afternoon light, and the sounds of the world below felt distant. "Come, sit with me," Lynn said, gesturing to the chair opposite her. Mai looked hesitant at first, her eyes scanning the small table and the peaceful setup, but she sat down. Lynn poured her a cup of tea and handed it to her with a smile. "Thank you," Mai said, taking a sip. "This is nice. I'm not used to this, calmness. How do you do it? How do you manage to stay so peaceful with everything going on?" Lynn paused, choosing her words carefully. She didn't want to sound preachy, but she also wanted to share the truth she had discovered. It's not about getting everything under control. It's about being present with whatever is happening. The more I learned to be present, the less I felt the need to control or force things. I just let life unfold, and in doing so, I found peace. Mai's brow furrowed slightly. "But doesn't that mean things will just pile up? Don't you need to manage your time better to get things done?" Lynn smiled. "That's the beauty of it. When you're present with what you're doing, you become more efficient. You're no longer distracted by worries about what's next or what you missed. You do what needs to be done, but you do it with a sense of calm, without rushing." Mai sat back in her chair, looking out at the view. She was quiet for a long time, processing Lynn's words. "I think I understand," Mai finally said. "It's about accepting what's in front of you and not worrying about everything else." Lynn nodded. "Exactly. Life is always moving. But if you stay present, you move with it, instead of trying to fight against it." A ripple effect over the next few months, Lynn noticed a gradual shift in her relationships. The more she practiced mindfulness and embraced stillness, the more it seemed to resonate with the people around her. Her friends, her family, even her colleagues began to notice the change in her energy. She was no longer rushing, no longer stressed. She was simply being, and in that being, she inspired those around her to do the same. Sarah, the colleague who had once been overwhelmed by work, began to practice mindfulness herself. She started taking small breaks during the day to breathe, focus, and let go of the pressure. She even started bringing her lunch outside, walking in the park during her breaks to reconnect with herself. Mai too began to slow down. At first it was just small steps. She spent more time reading in the evening instead of working late into the night. She started walking home from work instead of rushing through her day. Slowly, the restlessness that had once consumed her began to fade, and Lynn, for her part, continued her journey. She found herself more present in her daily life, more connected to the flow of things. She no longer felt the need to control her life, to force things to happen. Instead, she allowed life to unfold with grace, knowing that she could navigate it with mindfulness, calm, and patience. Her connection to the forest remained strong. Whenever she needed to recharge, to reconnect with the peace she had found there, she would close her eyes and imagine the gentle flow of the creek, the soft rustling of the trees, and the stillness that enveloped her. She didn't need to be physically in the forest to feel its presence, its wisdom, its peace, and its calm were always with her. The quiet journey continues as Lynn continued to live her life with mindfulness. The lessons of the forest became more and more a part of her. She understood now that true peace didn't come from escaping the world, but from fully engaging with it in a way that was grounded and present. She didn't need to run from the challenges of life. She needed only to face them with calm and presence, knowing that everything she needed was already within her. And so, her journey continued, not just in the physical world, but in her heart and mind as well. She was no longer searching for peace, for happiness, or for purpose. She had found it right where she was, in the stillness of her own being, in the quiet moments of presence, and in the simple act of allowing life to flow. Part 6. A deeper awakening. The days continued to unfold, soft and steady, like the gentle rhythm of a heartbeat. Lynn had learned to embrace the flow of life, and each day she found new ways to practice the stillness she had discovered in the forest. Yet, she felt that there was something more, something deeper waiting to be explored. Lynn had been practicing mindfulness for several months now, and while she had seen dramatic changes in her own life, she began to feel the stirring of a new phase in her journey. It was as though the forest, that sacred place where she first found peace, was calling to her again. This time, however, it wasn't just to seek tranquility, it was to learn something more profound about herself and the world around her. It was a quiet morning when Lynn made the decision. She had been sitting at her desk, enjoying a cup of tea, when a deep sense of knowing washed over her. She needed to return to the forest. She needed to go back, not just to recharge, but to deepen her connection to the land and to her inner wisdom. This time, she was going alone. She knew that the forest held answers she had yet to discover, and she needed to immerse herself fully in its silence and stillness. With the intention of deepening her practice and gaining more insight, Lynn packed a small bag, prepared some simple meals, and set out on her journey. The return to the forest, the familiar scent of pine trees and fresh earth greeted Lynn as she entered the forest. The air felt cooler here, refreshing and alive, as though the forest had been waiting for her return. It was still early in the morning, and the first light of dawn had begun to filter through the trees, casting long, soft shadows across the forest floor. This time, Lynn didn't immediately head to the pond or the stream. Instead, she followed a narrow trail she hadn't noticed before. It wound its way through a thicket of trees, deeper into the heart of the forest, where the canopy grew thicker, and the sounds of the outside world faded completely as she walked. Lynn felt a deep sense of peace settling over her, a quiet hum of energy that resonated with her very being. The path was rougher here, and it required more attention and care with each step. She moved slowly, savoring the feeling of being present. In every step she took, with each passing minute, Lynn felt herself becoming more attuned to the forest. She was no longer just walking through the trees. She was becoming a part of them. The wind whispered through the leaves, the branches seemed to bend toward her, and the earth beneath her feet felt as if it were alive, gently supporting her as she moved forward. She arrived at a small clearing after what felt like hours of walking. In the center was a large stone, smooth and flat, with a deep indentation at its center. The stone looked ancient, and its surface seemed to hum with energy, as though it had been there for centuries, waiting for someone to find it. Lynn felt drawn to the stone, an inexplicable pull to sit upon it. She placed her hands on its surface and closed her eyes. The air around her seemed to shift, and she took a deep breath, allowing herself to fully surrender to the present moment. It was here, in the quiet of the forest, that Lynn began to experience something she had never encountered before, a deep sense of connection, not just to the forest, but to something much larger, something beyond the physical world. It was as if she was tapping into a source of ancient wisdom, something eternal and all-encompassing. A moment of deep awareness, Lynn sat quietly, letting her mind settle. She had been in the forest countless times before, but this moment felt different. The energy in the air felt charged, as though the entire forest was alive with a deeper truth, and she had finally tuned into it. Suddenly, she felt as though she was no longer alone. It wasn't that someone had appeared beside her. It was the feeling that the forest itself was speaking to her. Not with words, but with a deep, ancient language, one that could only be felt, experienced, and understood at a soul level. Lynn's breath deepened as she let go of any thoughts or expectations. She let the stillness wash over her, allowing herself to fully open to whatever was being offered. She didn't try to understand it or force an interpretation. She simply surrendered to the experience. In that moment, Lynn felt a profound shift inside her. The forest, with all its wisdom and energy, had revealed something to her. It wasn't just a place to escape the noise of the world, it was a place to return to her own essence, to remember who she truly was beneath the layers of life's demands and distractions. For the first time, Lynn understood the true meaning of surrender. It wasn't about giving up control or letting go of her dreams. It was about surrendering to the flow of life, allowing herself to be part of something greater than herself, and trusting that everything she needed would unfold in its own time. Forest had shown her that there was a deeper intelligence at work in her life. All of her experiences, all of her challenges, had been leading her to this moment of understanding. The quiet, still wisdom of the trees, the flowing water, the soft whispers of the wind, all of it was part of the greater flow of existence, a flow that she was now learning to trust. A gift of insights, Lynn continued to sit on the stone. A sudden realization washed over her. It was as if the forest was offering her a gift, new way of seeing herself and her place in the world. She had spent so much of her life trying to control, trying to fix things, trying to force outcomes. But in the stillness of the forest, she had learned that true wisdom and peace came from releasing the need for control. Lynn opened her eyes slowly, the light of the morning sun now casting a warm glow across the clearing. The forest around her seemed to hum with energy, and she knew, in that moment, that she had received a gift that would change her forever. The forest had taught her that peace wasn't something to be achieved. It was something to be embraced. It was something that came naturally when she allowed herself to be fully present, when she stopped struggling against the current and allowed herself to float with it. The deeper lesson, Lynn realized, was that the forest was not just a place of peace, it was a reflection of her own inner nature. Just as the forest grew and evolved, so too did she. Just as the trees shed their leaves in the fall, so too did she need to release the things that no longer served her. The forest, with its cyclical rhythms and its quiet wisdom, had shown her the beauty of transformation. The next step in the journey, as Lynn stood up from the stone, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that her journey was not over, that there were still many layers of herself to discover, many lessons to learn. But she also knew that she was no longer the same person who had walked into this forest all those months ago. She was no longer searching for peace outside of herself. She had discovered it within. The forest had shown her that peace was not a destination, but a journey that unfolded with every breath, every step, every moment of presence. With a heart full of gratitude, Lynn made her way back along the path she had taken, feeling the wisdom of the forest within her, guiding her forward. The forest had given her the gift of understanding that she was always a part of the flow of life, always connected to the greater whole, always surrounded by the infinite wisdom of the universe. And as she walked back toward the edge of the forest, Lynn knew that no matter where life took her, the wisdom of the forest would always be with her, whispering softly in her heart, reminding her to stay present, to stay grounded, and to trust in the flow of life. Part 7. A life in Flowlin walked out of the forest with a lightness in her heart, as though the weight of the world had been lifted from her shoulders. The ancient stone, the quiet whispers of the wind, and the stillness of the trees had given her something more than peace. They had given her a deeper understanding of herself and her place in the world. She knew now that life wasn't about constant striving or chasing after goals. It was about being present and allowing things to unfold as they were meant to. As Lynn returned to her daily life, she carried this newfound understanding with her. She didn't try to force it into her life. Instead, she simply allowed the lessons of the forest to emerge naturally, as if they were always there, waiting to be recognized. A subtle shift in perspective back at work. Lynn's approach had subtly shifted. The projects that once felt overwhelming now seemed manageable, even enjoyable. Where there had once been pressure and stress, there was now an ease in her movements. When a problem arose, she didn't panic or react out of habit. Instead, she took a moment to breathe, to center herself, and then approached the situation with a calm and clear mind. Her colleagues began to notice the change in her. Sarah, her colleague who had been overwhelmed before, commented on it one morning. "You seem different lately, Lynn," Sarah said, handing Lynn a cup of coffee. More, grounded. "I don't know how you do it. You're handling everything so well." Lynn smiled, knowing that her transformation wasn't something she had to explain. She had simply learned how to move through life with presence, without being consumed by the whirlwind of tasks and demands. "I've learned to slow down," Lynn said simply. "Instead of rushing through things, I take my time. I focus on the present moment." It's amazing how much more you can accomplish when you're not trying to do everything at once. Sarah looked thoughtful. "Maybe I should try that. I'm always so busy trying to keep up with everything. It feels like I'm constantly running from one thing to the next." Lynn nodded. "We're all caught up in that pace sometimes. But if we don't take a moment to pause, we miss out on the beauty of life, even the small moments." A growing awareness in the following weeks, Lynn found herself becoming more attuned to the natural world around her. The lessons from the forest didn't just stay in her mind, they began to shape the way she interacted with the world. She started noticing the small things that most people overlooked, the way the sunlight filtered through the trees during her morning walk to work, the sound of the birds calling to each other in the park, the feel of the wind on her skin as she walked by the river. She began to appreciate the quiet moments, the moments when everything seemed to slow down and she could truly see and feel the world around her. These moments of awareness became her sanctuary, places where she could return to the peace she had discovered in the forest. At night, as she prepared for bed, Lynn began to take a few minutes to reflect on her day. She would sit quietly, close her eyes, and take a few deep breaths, grounding herself in the present moment. She thought about the moments when she had felt connected, whether it was the laughter shared with a friend, the satisfaction of completing a task, or the simple joy of sitting outside and watching the sunset. These moments of reflection became a way for her to reconnect with the stillness within her. Even as life continued to move around her, she found that the more she practiced this mindfulness, the more peaceful her thoughts became. The swirling, busy thoughts that once filled her mind no longer had the power to control her. Instead, she was able to step back from them, observe them, and let them pass without becoming entangled in them. Nurturing relationships as Lin's inner peace deepened. She also found that her relationships were transforming. She was no longer as reactive or quick to judgment. She listened more deeply, not just with her ears, but with her heart. She began to notice how often she had been distracted in the past, thinking of her own responses rather than truly hearing what others had to say. One afternoon, Lin met her friend Mai for lunch. Mai had been going through a difficult time at work, and Lin could sense her sister's frustration. "Everything is just so overwhelming." "Lin," Mai said, her voice tight with stress. "I feel like I'm being pulled in every direction, and nothing is ever enough. It's like I'm running a race that I can't win." Lin listened without interrupting, allowing Mai to share her feelings. When she spoke, her words were calm and centered, like a gentle river flowing through the conversation. "I understand how that feels," Lin said softly. "But what if you didn't have to run that race? What if, instead of trying to keep up with everything, you allowed yourself to pause and simply be? I know it's not easy, but sometimes stepping back and taking a moment for yourself can help you see things more clearly." Mai looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. "How do you even do that? How do you stop when everything is constantly demanding your attention?" Lin smiled, remembering her own journey. "It's not about stopping everything. It's about giving yourself permission to breathe, to slow down, and to truly listen to what you need. You're not a machine, Mai. You're a person, and you deserve to feel peace, not just be caught in the chaos." The flow of life continues as time passed. Lin's life continued to flow, not in a straight line, but in a natural, rhythmic way, like the ebb and flow of the ocean. Like the cycle of the seasons in the forest, she no longer tried to control everything, to force things to happen. Instead, she trusted that the universe had its own rhythm, and by staying present and connected, she could move with it, rather than against it. Her relationship with the forest remained strong. Every few months, Lin would return to the woods, not just to relax, but to reconnect with the deeper wisdom it offered. The lessons of the forest had become a part of her, and she knew that she could always return to that place of stillness and peace whenever she needed it. Her connection to nature had expanded as well. She began to spend more time outdoors, taking walks in the park, sitting by the river, or simply watching the trees sway in the breeze. She understood now that the forest wasn't just a place, nature was a part of her, always with her, in every leaf and every breath of wind. Lin had found a new sense of peace, not because she was trying to escape the world, but because she had learned to live in harmony with it. She was no longer at war with the pace of life. Instead, she was moving with it, flowing like the river, trusting the journey, and embracing the beauty of the present moment. A new purpose it was in these moments of stillness, of deep connection to herself and the world around her, that Lin realized her purpose. She was not here to conquer or control, but to live fully, to be present, and to help others find that same peace. She began to share her journey more openly, offering the lessons she had learned from the forest to those who were seeking peace. Whether it was through conversations with friends, quiet guidance to colleagues, or simply offering a listening ear, Lin shared the wisdom of mindfulness with others. Her life had become a quiet invitation for others to pause, to breathe, and to remember the beauty of the present moment. And as she continued on her journey, Lin knew that the greatest gift she could offer the world was simply to be, to remain grounded and present. just as the trees in the forest stood, unshaken by the winds of change, rooted deeply in the earth. Part 8. The gift of sharing. Lin's life had found its rhythm, a dance between the busy city and the tranquil wisdom of the forest. Each day, she walked with intention, fully present in the moments that made up her life. Her practice of mindfulness was no longer something she had to actively work at. It had become second nature. She moved through her days with grace, carrying the lessons of the forest in her heart, and this peace radiated outward. But as her journey continued, Lin realized that while she had embraced peace and mindfulness, her true calling was to help others discover the same freedom. She had found her path in life, and she felt a deep sense of purpose in sharing the wisdom of the forest with those around her. A quiet transformation. One evening, Lin was walking through the park, the sun casting a golden light over the trees and grass. The air was crisp with the coming autumn, and the ground was littered with fallen leaves. She had always enjoyed these walks, but today felt different. The world around her seemed even more alive than usual, as though everything was pulsing with energy as she strolled. Lin couldn't help but notice how the people around her seemed to be caught up in their own worlds, their eyes glued to their phones, their heads down as they walked quickly to their destinations. She observed them not with judgment, but with compassion. She understood that feeling of being trapped in the rush of life. She had once been there. And then it hit her. Lin realized that her journey wasn't just about finding peace for herself, it was about guiding others toward that peace, helping them slow down, reconnect, and live fully in the present moment. She couldn't help but wonder if others, like she once had, were in need of that quiet stillness, that sense of presence that the forest had given her. The first step, sharing the practice. The next day, Lin began thinking seriously about how she could share the peace she had found with others. She decided to start small, with the people closest to her, her friends, her colleagues, and her family. She didn't want to overwhelm them with complicated ideas or long-winded explanations. Instead, she decided to introduce them to mindfulness in a simple, accessible way. She started with her best friend, Anne, who had always been a whirlwind of activity. Anne was constantly juggling multiple tasks, never seeming to slow down. Lin invited her to a quiet cafe one afternoon, hoping to create a space where they could talk without distractions. When Anne arrived, she immediately started talking about the long list of things she had to do and how stressed she was. Lin listened quietly, letting her friend speak freely. After a while, she gently interrupted. "Anne, I understand how busy things can get," Lin said, "but I want to share something with you, something that's really helped me. It's not a big secret or a miracle cure, but it's something simple, just taking a few moments to breathe, to be still, and to be present." Anne raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean by be present?" "I mean, I'm always present. I'm just ... always doing something." Lin smiled, feeling the warmth of her friend's energy. Being present isn't about doing, it's about being. It's about taking a moment to stop, breathe, and simply experience whatever is happening around you. It can be as simple as noticing how your body feels, how your breath moves, or what you're hearing in the moment. It's about slowing down, even for a minute. Anne's face softened. "You mean actually pausing in the middle of everything?" "Yes," Lin replied. "And not feeling like you're behind or missing something. Just being in the moment. I promise it will help." For the next 10 minutes, Lin guided Anne through a short mindfulness exercise, closing their eyes, taking slow breaths, and simply focusing on the sounds around them. It was a simple practice, But when they opened their eyes again, Anne seemed calmer. That was actually really nice, Anne said, surprised. I didn't realize how much tension I was holding. Lynn smiled. Sometimes it just takes a moment to reconnect. You don't need to change everything in your life. Just taking time for small pauses, like this one, can make a big difference. A ripple of change over the next few weeks. Lynn continued to share her practice of mindfulness with those around her. She invited colleagues to join her for brief moments of stillness during their lunch breaks. She showed her family how to breathe deeply and appreciate the simple pleasures of daily life, like savoring a cup of tea or watching the sunset. To Lynn's surprise, people began to open up to the idea. At work, Sarah, who had been initially skeptical, started taking short walks during her breaks, noticing the beauty of the trees and the sky instead of rushing from task to task. Her sister, who had been struggling with stress, found herself setting aside time each day to breathe and slow down, even for just 5 minutes. It was as if Lynn's own peace was becoming contagious, spreading to the people she interacted with. Each person she shared her practice with began to experience small moments of calm and presence in their own lives, and it warmed Lynn's heart to see these small changes unfold. A new path, teaching mindfulness. As Lynn continued to share the benefits of mindfulness, she began to consider a new path for herself. She realized that this practice's gift of presence was something she wanted to offer to more people, beyond just her circle of friends and family. She began researching mindfulness and meditation practices, attending workshops and learning from teachers who had dedicated their lives to this practice. Eventually, Lynn made the decision to pursue a certification in mindfulness teaching. She didn't know exactly where this journey would lead, but she felt certain that it was the next step for her. The peace she had found in the forest wasn't just for her. It was for everyone who was struggling to find stillness in the chaos of life. One afternoon, Lynn stood on the balcony of her apartment, looking out at the skyline. The city seemed to buzz below her, filled with energy and movement. Yet, she felt completely at peace. She knew that she had found her path not just to peace, but to helping others discover it as well. Her life had come full circle. From the quiet of the forest to the bustle of the city, Lynn had learned how to find peace in every moment. And now, she was ready to share that peace with the world, one breath at a time. Part 9. A new calling. Lynn's decision to pursue mindfulness teaching felt like a natural next step, but it was also a little daunting. She had always been the quiet observer, someone who had sought peace in stillness. Now, she was stepping into the role of a teacher, someone who would be guiding others on their own journeys of mindfulness and presence. It was a responsibility she didn't take lightly, but one that she felt deeply called to pursue. The certification process wasn't easy. It was filled with long hours of study, deep self-reflection, and practice. Lynn had to examine her own life, her own habits, and her relationship with mindfulness more thoroughly than ever before. She was required to meditate daily, journal her thoughts, and even lead small groups in mindfulness exercises. Every challenge she faced only deepened her commitment to the path she had chosen. One of the most difficult aspects of the training was confronting the parts of herself that she had previously overlooked, the fears, doubts, and old patterns of behavior that sometimes still surfaced. There were moments when Lynn doubted herself, when she questioned if she was truly ready to teach others. But each time, she returned to the forest of her heart, grounding herself in the lessons of the trees, the flowing water, and the stillness that had guided her from the very beginning. The first class after months of preparation, Lynn was finally ready to teach her first official mindfulness class. It was a small group, mostly friends, colleagues, and a few strangers who had heard about her from word of mouth. As the day of the class approached, Lynn felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She had led mindfulness exercises before, but this felt different. Now, she was stepping into the role of a guide, a teacher. The day arrived, and Lynn stood before the group, a little nervous but steady. She had chosen a quiet room in a local wellness center, with soft lighting and peaceful decor. The air was calm, the space welcoming. Lynn began the class with a simple invitation. Let's begin by taking a moment to simply breathe together, to arrive fully in this room. The room fell into a deep silence as everyone closed their eyes and took a collective breath. Lynn felt a sense of connection between herself and the group, as though they were all gathered in this sacred space, ready to explore mindfulness together. Lynn guided them through a series of gentle exercises, each one designed to help them become aware of their breath, their body, and the present moment. She reminded them that there was no right or wrong way to experience mindfulness, that it was simply about being present with whatever arose, without judgment or expectation. As the class unfolded, Lynn felt a deep sense of peace. She saw people's faces soften, their bodies relax, and their breaths slow. She noticed how, as the minutes passed, the energy in the room shifted from one of tension to one of calm. It was as if everyone was shedding the weight of their day, coming back to themselves, back to the present moment at the end of the session. Lynn invited the group to share their experiences. One person spoke about how the mindfulness exercise had helped them release the tension in their shoulders, which had been a constant source of discomfort. Another shared that they had felt more present in the moment than they had in a long time, as if they were truly there, not thinking about the past or future. When the class ended, Lynn felt a sense of accomplishment. But more importantly, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She had given people a space to reconnect with themselves, to experience the peace that she had found, and that was a gift she would continue to offer for as long as she could. A new sense of purpose as Lynn's journey into teaching continued. She began to see how deeply transformative mindfulness could be, not just for her, but for everyone who practiced it. She began leading weekly classes, hosting meditation retreats, and offering one-on-one sessions to people who wanted to dive deeper into the practice. She found herself working with people from all walks of life, some who were dealing with stress, others struggling with anxiety, and some simply looking for a way to find more peace in their busy lives. In each session, Lynn saw the same thing: people slowly coming back to themselves. They came in with tight shoulders and busy minds, but by the end of the practice, they often looked lighter, more centered. Lynn knew that this was her calling to help others reconnect with their inner peace and to find calm amidst the chaos of life. Though Lynn had always been a quiet person, she realized that her true voice had emerged through teaching. It wasn't about lecturing or giving advice. It was about holding space for others to experience their own transformation. It was about guiding them toward the stillness she had found, showing them how to be present, how to breathe, and how to let go the challenges of being a teacher. But the journey was not without its challenges. There were moments when Lynn felt like an imposter, moments when she questioned her ability to guide others. She had her own struggles with anxiety and self-doubt, and it was easy to feel overwhelmed by the responsibility of being a teacher. One afternoon, after a particularly difficult class where she felt she had stumbled through the exercises, Lynn sat alone in her apartment, reflecting on her feelings of inadequacy. She wondered if she was truly equipped to be a teacher, if she was capable of helping others in the way she wanted to. But as she sat in silence, the wisdom of the forest came rushing back. It wasn't about being perfect or having all the answers. It was about being present. It was about holding space for others without judgment and trusting the process. She didn't need to be perfect to be a teacher. She only needed to be authentic, to be true to herself, and to guide others with compassion. The continuation of the journey Lynn's path as a mindfulness teacher was only just beginning, but she felt a deep sense of fulfillment and peace in knowing that she was walking the path she was meant to walk. Each day brought new lessons, new challenges, and new opportunities to grow, both as a teacher and as a person. She knew there would be moments of doubt and uncertainty, but she also knew that those moments were part of the journey. As Lynn stood in the quiet of her room that evening, she thought back to her first steps into the forest, when she had been searching for peace and direction. She realized that she had found both, not in some faraway place or in a perfect solution, but in the simple act of being present, of accepting life as it was, and of trusting that everything would unfold in its own time. With a deep breath, Lynn closed her eyes and felt the stillness within her. She knew that she was exactly where she needed to be, walking the path of mindfulness, teaching others and sharing the wisdom she had found. Her journey was far from over, but she was no longer searching for peace outside of herself. She had found it right where she was, in the present moment, and she knew that this would be the foundation of her life, her work, and her teachings. Part 10. The ripple of Changelyn's life had become a quiet rhythm of teaching, practicing, and living in the present moment. Each day she moved through the world with a sense of calm, no longer rushing or striving. Her classes had grown, and she had started to build a community of individuals who were eager to explore the depths of mindfulness. People from all walks of life came to her with different struggles: stress from work, anxiety from family pressures, or simply a desire to slow down and be present. It was humbling to witness the transformation in those who walked through her door. The once busy minds were now becoming still. The tight shoulders and furrowed brows softened, and Lynn could see the subtle changes in their expressions after each session. They were discovering something that Lynn herself had found years ago: a quiet peace that didn't require striving, just being. But despite the joy she felt in guiding others, Lynn continued to face moments of self-doubt. Was she truly helping? Was she living up to the potential she felt she had discovered in herself? There were days when she felt overwhelmed by the responsibility, unsure if she was qualified to help others navigate their own paths to peace. One evening, after a particularly fulfilling class, Lynn sat on the edge of the small balcony of her apartment, watching the sunset. The sky was painted in hues of pink and orange, and the world seemed to pause with her. The sounds of the city below faded, and all she could hear was the gentle hum of the breeze. She closed her eyes, letting the warmth of the evening wash over her, the power of being present in the quiet of the moment. Lynn realized that her greatest gift as a teacher was not her ability to impart knowledge, but her capacity to hold space for others. She had spent so much time questioning herself and trying to be something she wasn't, but in truth, her authentic presence was all that was needed. The forest had shown her that everything she needed was already inside of her. It wasn't about being perfect or having all the answers. It was about being real, about being present in every moment. Lynn's heart opened as she embraced this truth. Her self-doubt began to dissolve, replaced with a deep sense of acceptance. She didn't need to strive for perfection. She just needed to be true to herself, to continue to embody the lessons of mindfulness in her own life. A moment of connection. The following week, Lynn had the opportunity to lead a weekend mindfulness retreat. It was the first retreat she had ever organized, and it was both exciting and nerve-wracking. The retreat was held at a serene location outside of the city, an old farmhouse surrounded by lush gardens and rolling hills. It was the perfect space for people to unplug, slow down, and dive deeper into mindfulness. The group of participants was diverse, each person bringing their own unique challenges and stories. Some were seasoned practitioners of mindfulness, while others were just beginning to explore the practice. Lynn felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as the retreat began. But as she stepped into the circle of people who had gathered to learn, she felt a deep sense of connection. Throughout the weekend, Lynn guided the group through various mindfulness practices: breathwork, body scans, mindful walking, and silent reflection. There were moments of discomfort, of restlessness, and doubt. But as Lynn had learned through her own journey, the key was to be with the discomfort, to allow it to be part of the process. Slowly, the participants began to settle into themselves, to let go of their expectations and simply experience the present moment. On the final day of the retreat, Lynn asked everyone to sit in silence and reflect on what they had learned. She invited them to share any insights or shifts they had experienced. One by one, the participants shared their experiences, and Lynn was deeply moved by what she heard. "I didn't realize how much I was holding on to until this weekend," one woman said. "I came here to escape stress, but I've learned that the peace I've been seeking is already within me. I just have to stop running from it." Another participant shared, "I've been so focused on my to-do list for years that I forgot how to simply be. This weekend has shown me the power of presence." As Lynn listened, she realized how far she had come on her own journey. She had once been in the same place, lost in the noise of her own mind, desperately searching for peace. But now she had found it, and now she was offering it to others. The ripple effect of mindfulness. After the retreat, Lynn received messages and feedback from the participants. Many expressed their gratitude for the experience and shared how much they had learned. One man, in particular, wrote a letter that deeply touched Lynn. He had come to the retreat with a heavy heart, weighed down by years of anxiety and stress. But by the end of the weekend, he felt lighter, more at peace, and ready to continue his mindfulness journey. Lynn knew that her work had just begun. She didn't need to have all the answers, and she didn't need to save anyone. Her role was simply to guide, to offer the tools and space for others to find their own peace. The forest had taught her that we all have the capacity for transformation. We just need to be willing to show up, to breathe, and to trust the process. As she sat with her thoughts that evening, Lynn felt a deep sense of gratitude. The path ahead was still uncertain, but she no longer feared the unknown. She knew that, just like in the forest, everything would unfold in its own time. Her job was to remain present, to show up with an open heart, and to trust that the seeds she was planting would grow, one breath at a time. Living the practice in the months that followed, Lynn continued to teach and to grow in her practice. Her work as a mindfulness teacher expanded, and she began to travel to different cities to offer workshops and retreats. She connected with other teachers, exchanging ideas and experiences. But she never lost sight of what was most important: the practice of mindfulness itself. Lynn's life had become a living meditation, a continual journey of discovery. She found joy in the simplest of moments, in the feeling of the sun on her skin, the sound of birds in the morning, the laughter of friends, and the stillness of the evening. Every day was an opportunity to be present, to practice, and to share the wisdom she had received. She realized that the journey of mindfulness would never truly end. It wasn't about reaching some final destination. It was about embracing the ebb and flow of life with open arms, knowing that each moment held its own wisdom and grace. As Lynn sat in meditation one evening, feeling the soft rhythm of her breath, she reflected on how far she had come. She had moved from a place of searching and striving to a place of presence and peace. She had learned that true freedom comes not from controlling life, but from surrendering to it, from trusting the flow of the present moment. And in this surrender, she had found her purpose, helping others discover the peace and presence that was already within them. Part 11. The Path of Continuous Growth. As Lynn continued her work as a mindfulness teacher, she found herself moving through a deeper layer of personal transformation. The more she taught, the more she learned, it not just from books or from the great masters of mindfulness, but from the people who came to her seeking their own peace. Every class, every conversation, and every retreat was an opportunity for growth, not just for her students, but for herself. It was no longer enough to simply teach mindfulness. Lynn had learned that true teaching was about living the practice, embodying the lessons in every action, every word, and every moment. Mindfulness, she realized, was not something you did. It was something you were. It was not confined to the cushion or the classroom. It was integrated into every aspect of life. One day, after a particularly challenging session with a group, Lynn sat in her quiet office, reflecting on the experience. The class had been full of people who were struggling with deep emotional pain, people who were confronting old wounds, facing their fears, and letting go of things that had long held them captive. It was powerful work, but it was also exhausting. Lynn had done her best to hold space for everyone, to guide them with compassion and patience. Yet, she felt a deep, subtle tension within her, as though something was stirring beneath the surface. The tension between teaching and living. As Lynn reflected on the class, she realized that despite her dedication to the practice, there were moments when she struggled to be fully present. Moments when her own unresolved emotions began to surface. Mindfulness had taught her so much about accepting what was present, but there were still moments of discomfort, fear, and doubt that she hadn't fully addressed within herself. Lynn had always thought of herself as someone who had come to a place of peace, but the deeper she went into her teaching, the more she realized that peace wasn't something you could achieve and then be done with. It was an ongoing process, an evolving journey of self-discovery and growth. She thought about her own struggles, how, at times, she still felt the tug of old fears. Fear of not being enough, of not being capable, of failing. The work she was doing was deeply meaningful, but it also stirred up emotions and challenges that she hadn't fully faced before. She smiled softly to herself. This too was part of the journey. There was no destination where all was perfect. The practice was about continuously showing up, meeting each moment with awareness and compassion. No matter what arose, finding balance and compassion the next morning. Lynn went for a walk in the park, seeking the solace of nature once again. The sun was low, casting a golden glow over everything, and the soft rustle of leaves in the wind reminded her of the constant, gentle flow of life. She sat on a bench near the pond, watching the ducks glide across the water. The quiet of the Morning enveloped her, and she took a deep breath, allowing herself to simply be. It was in these moments of stillness that Lynn found clarity. She realized that the discomfort she had been feeling wasn't something to be pushed away. It was an opportunity to dive deeper, to explore the parts of herself that still needed healing. Mindfulness wasn't just for others, it was for herself. 2. She began to explore this tension in her own practice. Each morning, before the start of her day, she sat in stillness, giving herself space to feel whatever came up. She wasn't trying to fix or change anything. She was simply allowing it to be. If fear arose, she breathed with it. If doubt surfaced, she acknowledged it and let it pass. Slowly, she realized that the more she embraced the fullness of her own emotions, the more she could hold space for others to do the same. A new understanding of teaching as Lynn delved deeper into her own healing, she found that her teaching evolved. She began to share more openly with her students, not just the successes and breakthroughs, but also the struggles. She shared how mindfulness had helped her face her own fears and discomfort, how it had shown her the importance of accepting all parts of herself, even the ones that felt imperfect. One evening after a class, a student approached her. His name was David, and he had been attending Lynn's classes for a few months. He had been dealing with chronic anxiety and felt that the practice was helping, but he still struggled with self-doubt. "Lynn," David said quietly, "I've been thinking about what you said tonight. You mentioned how mindfulness helps you accept the parts of yourself that feel imperfect. I don't think I've ever been able to do that. I'm always trying to push away my anxiety, to fix it, to get rid of it. But I don't know how to just sit with it." Lynn smiled warmly. "It's not always easy. I've been there myself. But mindfulness isn't about fixing anything. It's about learning to be with what's there, to notice it, and to allow it to exist without judgment. When we stop fighting our emotions, we create space for healing." David nodded slowly. "It's hard though. I feel like if I accept my anxiety, I'm letting it win." Lynn's voice was gentle but firm. Acceptance doesn't mean giving in. It means understanding that what you're feeling is part of being human. When you accept it, you're not allowing it to control you. You're simply recognizing it for what it isn't: emotion, a passing experience. It's when we resist that we give it power over us. David's eyes brightened as he listened. "I think I understand. It's about allowing things to be without trying to change them." Lynn nodded. "Exactly. And the more you practice, the easier it gets. You don't need to fix yourself, David. You're already whole. Mindfulness simply helps you reconnect with that wholeness." The power of vulnerability. The more Lynn shared her own journey with her students, the more she noticed a shift in the energy of her classes. There was a growing sense of vulnerability and openness in the room. Her students were no longer coming simply to learn techniques. They were coming to share their own struggles, to open up, and to be seen. Lynn realized that the most powerful lessons came not from the wisdom she imparted, but from the space she held for others to experience their own growth. Her vulnerability, her willingness to admit that she, too, was a work in progress, allowed others to feel safe in their own healing process. One evening, after a particularly powerful meditation session, Lynn sat with her students, and they spoke about their experiences. It was in these moments of sharing, of being raw and opened, that Lynn felt most alive, most connected to her purpose. It wasn't about being a perfect teacher or having all the answers. It was about showing up, being real, and walking the path alongside those she was guiding. A life of continuous practices. Lynn continued to grow as a teacher, and as a person. She realized that mindfulness wasn't just a practice she taught, it was a way of life. It was something that didn't end when the session was over. It was something she carried with her in every moment. Whether she was walking through the city streets, talking with friends, or sitting in meditation, mindfulness was her constant companion, and though the path was still unfolding, Lynn knew one thing for certain. She was on the right path. Not because it was easy or free from challenges, but because it was real. It was a journey of continuous growth, of embracing both the light and the dark, of accepting everything that came her way with presence and compassion in that moment. As Lynn sat quietly in the evening light, she felt a deep sense of gratitude for the path she had chosen. She was living her truth, sharing the gifts of mindfulness with others, and walking a path that was both meaningful and deeply fulfilling. Part 12. Full circle. In stood at the edge of the forest, where the trees stretched upward toward the sky, their leaves rustling gently in the wind. The path before her was familiar yet new, the same winding trail that had once been the place where her journey began. It was here that she had first come seeking peace, and here she had discovered the stillness that would forever change her life. Now, she stood at this threshold not as a seeker, but as a teacher, a guide for others who were walking their own paths of mindfulness and presence. Lynn had walked this path for years, not only as a practitioner, but also as someone who had learned to hold space for others. Yet, as she gazed into the forest, she knew that the journey would never end. It was a continual unfolding, a dance between what was learned and what still needed to be explored. The forest, in all its wisdom, had shown her that peace was not a destination, but a practice. It was something that had to be lived, breathed, and embodied in every moment. Integrating mindfulness into daily life, Lynn continued her work as a mindfulness teacher. She began to see that the most profound moments of learning came not during formal classes, but in the quiet, everyday moments. It was easy to meditate in a peaceful room with a group of people sharing the same intention. But the true test of mindfulness came when the world got busy, when challenges arose, and when old patterns threatened to re-emerge. She had always known that mindfulness was about the present moment, but now she understood more deeply that the practice extended far beyond sitting on a cushion or guiding others through exercises. It was about bringing mindfulness into the sciences of daily life, the traffic jams, the arguments, the moments of frustration, the joys of connection, and the quiet solitude. The real work wasn't in the perfection of the practice, but in the willingness to show up with full awareness, no matter the circumstances. A moment of reflection one evening. After a particularly full day of teaching, Lynn found herself in a small cafe, a space she often frequented when she needed a moment to reconnect with herself. It had become her ritual, a quiet moment in the midst of the world. She sat by the window, sipping her tea, watching the rain fall softly against the glass. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath, and allowed herself to simply be. She thought about the lessons she had taught that day, how to breathe, how to be present with thoughts, how to let go of judgment. But more than that, she thought about her own growth, her own journey. She had started this path seeking peace. At first, it had been about escaping the noise, the stress, and the overwhelming pace of life. But now, it was different. The peace she had found was not about escape, it was about embracing everything. It was about fully inhabiting the present moment with all its chaos and beauty, its light and darkness. Her teachings were an extension of this understanding. She wasn't offering a perfect solution or a magic fix. She was offering space for people to explore their own minds, their own emotions, and to find their own path to stillness. Facing the mirror as the weeks went on, Lynn found herself facing new challenges in her teaching. The more she shared her own vulnerability and growth, the more her students opened up to her. They trusted her, not because she was perfect, but because she had been honest about her own struggles. She had shown them that mindfulness wasn't about achieving perfection, was about embracing imperfection with kindness and compassion. One evening, a student named Hannah stayed after class, her expression heavy with something unspoken. Lynn noticed the weight in her eyes, the uncertainty in her body language. "Hannah, is everything all right?" Lynn asked gently. Hannah hesitated, then nodded. "I think so. It's just... I've been practicing mindfulness for a while now, but I still feel so restless. I know I'm supposed to find peace in the present moment, but there are still so many thoughts and worries. It feels like I'm failing at this." Lynn smiled warmly, gesturing for Hannah to sit. "You're not failing. In fact, you're doing exactly what mindfulness is about. It's not about stopping your thoughts or forcing yourself to feel peaceful. It's about being with your thoughts, your worries, and your restlessness, and accepting them without judgment. Mindfulness is not a fix. It's a way of being with whatever arises. But I'm not supposed to feel restless, right, Hannah?" asked, her voice tinged with frustration. "No," Lynn said softly. "It's not about what you're supposed to feel. It's about noticing what you're feeling and allowing it to exist without the need to change it. Restlessness, like all emotions, is just a passing moment. It comes and it goes. The more you try to control it, the more it will control you. But if you can sit with it without judgment, it loses its grip on you." Hannah looked down, considering Lynn's words. "So, it's okay to feel restless." "Absolutely," Lynn replied. "It's not about rejecting any emotion or thought. It's about seeing it clearly and allowing it to be part of your experience without trying to make it go away. When we accept what is, we free ourselves from the struggle." The ripple effect as Lynn continued to teach, she began to see a deeper shift in her students. They were learning to embrace their emotions without fear, to sit with discomfort, and to allow their lives to unfold as they were. In each class, she saw people slowly opening up, not only to themselves, but also to the people around them. Lynn's role as a teacher was not about fixing problems, but about guiding others toward understanding. She had learned that the key to teaching was not to offer solutions, but to create a space where others could discover their own answers, their own truths. One evening, after a class, she received an email from a former student named Min. His message left her with a deep sense of fulfillment. "I just wanted to thank you, Lynn. When I first came to your class, I thought mindfulness was about pushing away my anxiety. But I've realized that it's about being with it, not fighting it. This practice has helped me see that I'm not my thoughts or my fears. I can simply observe them without being controlled by them. I'm finally starting to feel at peace with myself, and that's something I never thought was possible." Reading Min's words, Lynn felt a surge of gratitude. This was the ripple effect of mindfulness, the way it had touched her life and now, in turn, touched the lives of others. It wasn't just about teaching a skill. It was about helping others find their own way to freedom, to peace, to presence. The path continues. Lynn's journey was far from over. She had come to understand that mindfulness was not a destination, but a way of being, an ongoing process of growth, learning, and healing. There would always be challenges, both for herself and for those she taught, but she no longer feared them. She had learned to face them with openness and acceptance, knowing that they were all part of the path. As she sat once again at the edge of the forest, looking out at the trees that had become her teachers, Lynn knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The path ahead was still unfolding, but she had learned to walk it with an open heart, ready to face whatever came her way with presence and peace. In the quiet of the moment, Lynn smiled. She had come full circle from a seeker searching for peace to a teacher helping others find their way. And she knew that the journey was not about finding the answers. It was about living the questions, embracing the unknown, and walking forward with faith in the process. Part 13. The heart of connection. Lynn had spent years practicing mindfulness, teaching others, and living in the present moment. But she had come to realize that the journey was not just about personal growth. It was about the connections she formed with others, the relationships, the shared experiences, and the way mindfulness brought people together in ways she hadn't anticipated. One evening, Lynn received a call from Sarah, one of her earliest students and a dear friend. Sarah had been coming to Lynn's classes for months, but recently she had been going through a difficult time. Her job had become more stressful, and her personal life was in turmoil. Despite her progress in mindfulness, she felt overwhelmed. "Lynn, I need to talk to you," Sarah said, her voice shaky. "I've been trying to practice what you've taught me, but it feels like everything is falling apart. I don't know what to do anymore." Lynn paused, listening carefully. She could hear the familiar strain in Sarah's voice, the same strain Lynn had felt many times before, when she had been lost in her own struggles. "I hear you, Sarah," Lynn said softly. "I know it feels heavy right now, but remember that mindfulness doesn't mean everything has to be perfect. It's about being present with whatever is happening, not trying to change it right away." "But what if I'm failing?" Sarah asked, her voice tinged with frustration. "What if I'm not doing it right?" Lynn smiled gently, her heart full of compassion. "Sarah, there's no right way to practice. It's not about getting it perfect. It's about showing up. Even when it feels messy, even when it's hard, the practice is just about being with what is. You're doing it, even when you don't realize it." The strength of vulnerability. Over the next few weeks, Lynn continued to speak with Sarah regularly, offering support and guidance. What struck Lynn the most during their conversations was how much Sarah's vulnerability allowed her to grow. Sarah wasn't afraid to admit that she didn't have all the answers. She wasn't ashamed of her struggles, and it was in this rawness that the real transformation began to take place. Lynn began to understand that mindfulness wasn't just a way to handle personal challenges, it was a tool for connecting deeply with others. By being open and vulnerable, Sarah was able to let go of the judgment she had placed on herself. And in sharing that vulnerability with Lynn, she created a space for her own healing. It made Lynn reflect on her own teaching. As a teacher, she had always thought that her role was to offer clarity and guidance, to help others find their way. But now, she saw that the real gift of teaching mindfulness wasn't in giving answers. It was in creating space for people to find their own answers, to explore their own feelings without fear or judgment. It was about holding space for others to be vulnerable, just as they were. New paths and unexpected encounters. Lynn's journey as a mindfulness teacher took unexpected turns. One of the most significant shifts happened when she was invited to speak at a conference on mental health and well-being. Initially, Lynn had hesitated. She wasn't sure if her voice was meant to be heard in that kind of space. But after some reflection, she realized that mindfulness could have a powerful role to play in how people approached their mental and emotional struggles, particularly in environments that were more clinical or professional. At the conference, Lynn spoke about the importance of being present with our emotions and how mindfulness could offer relief from the constant pressure of achieving perfection. She shared her personal journey, how mindfulness had helped her overcome her own struggles with anxiety and self-doubt, and how it had brought her peace, not by making everything go away, but by helping her accept everything as it was. Her speech resonated with many in the audience. People from various backgrounds, therapists, counselors, and everyday individuals came up to her afterward, sharing their stories. They thanked her for offering a new perspective, one that wasn't about fixing problems but about being present with them. That evening, Lynn sat in her hotel room, reflecting on the day. She had spent so much of her life trying to figure out how to fix herself and others, trying to find the right answers. But now, she was realizing that the practice of mindfulness wasn't about fixing anything. It was about accepting what was, being with it, and allowing it to pass. In that moment, Lynn realized that mindfulness had woven itself into the fabric of her life in ways she hadn't expected. It had helped her heal. It had brought people into her life, and it was connecting her to a larger community. It was no longer just a personal practice, it was a shared experience, one that was continuously unfolding. The circle of teaching, one of the most profound moments for Lynn, came when she held a retreat for her students. As part of the retreat, she invited her students to share their stories, their struggles, and their victories with the group. At first, it was quiet. People were hesitant, unsure of how to express their experiences. But as the hours passed, something beautiful happened. One by one, the participants opened up. They shared their fears, their challenges, their triumphs. Some spoke of family struggles, others of workplace stress, and a few about their personal battles with mental health. But what amazed Lynn was how each story, though unique, was connected by the thread of mindfulness. Each person had discovered, in their own way, that they could accept their struggles and embrace the present moment. No matter what it contained, Lynn realized that this was what mindfulness truly offered: the ability to see ourselves clearly, to be vulnerable, and to connect with others through our shared humanity. She was no longer just teaching a practice. She was fostering a community. She was creating a space where people could be seen, heard, and accepted just as they were. Embracing the ever-unfolding journey, as Lynn looked back on the years of her teaching journey, she saw how much she had changed. The path was not always smooth. There had been moments of doubt, fear, and struggle, but each step had led her to a deeper understanding of herself and others. She had learned that teaching was not about having all the answers or being perfect. It was about sharing what she had learned, holding space for others, and allowing them to walk their own path at their own pace. She had learned that mindfulness wasn't just a practice, it was a way of being in the world, a way of relating to oneself and to others with kindness, compassion, and acceptance. Lynn had come full circle. The forest that had once offered her peace and guidance had now become a symbol of the journey itself, ever growing, ever changing, and ever present. She had learned to embrace every part of her journey, even the parts that were difficult or uncomfortable, and in doing so, she had found a deeper connection to herself and to the world around her. As she stood on the edge of the forest once again, she smiled. There was still so much to learn, so much to experience. But now, she was not afraid. She knew that the path ahead was full of potential, full of connection. and full of endless opportunities for growth. And so, Lin continued on her journey, not as a teacher with all the answers, but as a fellow traveler walking alongside others, as they discovered the peace, the presence, and the power of mindfulness for themselves. Part 14. A new beginning. Lin woke up to a new morning, the sunlight filtering softly through her window, painting the room in a warm, golden hue. She had spent the last few years teaching, guiding others, and learning from the wisdom of mindfulness. But now, she felt a shift and evolution in her own journey. It was as if she had arrived at a new chapter, one that was both familiar and unknown at the same time. She had traveled this path for so long, and now, it seemed like it was time to step into a deeper phase of her life. As she sipped her morning tea, Lin thought about everything she had learned. The beauty of being present, the power of vulnerability, and the importance of embracing each moment as it came. But she also realized that the journey of teaching mindfulness was not just about offering guidance, it was about deepening her own practice and continually exploring what it meant to truly live mindfully. There were days when Lin felt the weight of the responsibility guiding others, helping them navigate their struggles, their fears, and their doubts. But there were also moments of great joy, when she saw the transformation in others, the shifts in their awareness, the quiet peace they began to carry within themselves. It was these moments that reminded her why she had chosen this path. But now, as Lin reflected on her journey, she realized that her role as a teacher was evolving. She wasn't just guiding others to mindfulness. She was learning, growing, and evolving along with them. And as she did, her own understanding of mindfulness deepened in ways she hadn't expected. The transformation of teaching. Lin's teaching had always been about holding space for others. But as she looked back, she saw that it had also been a journey of self-discovery. Teaching had brought up her own fears, insecurities, and vulnerabilities, which she had learned to face head-on. In guiding others, she had learned how to be gentle with herself, how to embrace her imperfections, and how to allow the process of growth to unfold naturally. Without forcing it, it wasn't just about giving mindfulness techniques or meditation instructions. The essence of her teaching, Lin now realized, was in the way she lived her practice. The lessons were in the pauses, the moments of quiet, and the acceptance of all that arose in the present moment. Her students had seen this in her authenticity, her willingness to be real and vulnerable, and her commitment to living with presence. And so, Lin found herself moving into a new phase of her life. She wasn't sure what this new chapter would look like, but she knew that it would involve embracing the unknown, continuing to guide others, and allowing her own practice to continue unfolding. She was no longer just teaching the art of mindfulness. She was living it. She spent more time in nature, walking the paths that had first shown her the power of stillness. Each step, each breath, was a reminder of the simplicity and beauty of life, of the importance of being present in every moment. A final lesson. One afternoon, while walking in the park, Lin encountered a familiar face. It was Mai, her sister, who had been with her from the very beginning of her journey. Mai had always been skeptical of mindfulness, dismissing it as just another trend that didn't offer real solutions. But over the years, Lin had noticed a shift in her eye. "Been thinking a lot about what you've said, Lin," Mai began, her voice calm. "You know, I didn't get it at first. I thought it was all just about sitting in silence, waiting for everything to feel better. But I see now mindfulness is about how you live your life, not just about how you feel in certain moments." Lin smiled softly, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for her sister's openness. Yes, she said gently. It's not about fixing or changing everything. It's about being with everything just as it is, and allowing it to be part of the flow of life. I nodded thoughtfully. I've started practicing on my own. Just small things, taking a breath before reacting, being present with the people I care about. It's not always easy, but I can see how it changes things. Lynn felt a surge of love and pride for her sister. Over the years, she had watched my struggle, resist, and fight the pace of life. But now, she saw her embracing the same stillness that had brought Lynn peace. The process wasn't always easy, but it was real, and it was transformative. The full circle as Lynn continued to walk alongside others, guiding them with mindfulness and presence, she came to a profound realization. Teaching was not about offering answers, it was about creating a space where people could discover their own truth, their own peace, their own presence. The work wasn't in solving problems, it was in helping others reconnect with the wisdom they already carried within them. Lynn had come full circle, from a seeker of peace to a teacher, and now to someone who was walking alongside others as they discovered their own journey. The forest, the teachings, the mindfulness practice, everything had led her here, and she knew that this path would continue to evolve, bringing new lessons, new experiences, and new opportunities to grow. She had no need to plan every step of the journey. The beauty was in trusting that it would unfold in its own time, with each moment, each breath, and each connection. And so, Lynn continued to walk the path of mindfulness, knowing that the journey would never truly end. There would always be more to discover, more to learn, and more to share. But the beauty of it was that, with every step, she was already home. Part 15, the closing of a chapter, and the beginning of another. Lynn had reached a point in her life where the practice of mindfulness was no longer something she did. It was who she was. It was in her breath, in the way she walked, in how she listened to the world, and in how she shared her journey with others. She had faced the challenges of teaching, of leading others through their own personal struggles, and had learned the importance of patience, compassion, and vulnerability. But perhaps the most powerful lesson of all was that mindfulness was not just a tool, it was a way of life. Lynn's heart swelled with gratitude as she thought about everything that had led her to this point. From the quiet of the forest to the busy streets of the city, from the solitude of her own meditation practice to the community of students she had guided. Each moment had been a part of a greater unfolding. She no longer sought perfection. Instead, she embraced each moment with all of its imperfections, its missigns, and its beauty. She had learned that the present moment was enough, just as it was in the final moments of her journey. Lynn realized that the work wasn't in arriving at some perfect place, but in walking the path with an open heart. And in that openness, she found peace. As the sun set one evening, casting its warm light over the world, Lynn closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She was exactly where she needed to be, whole, present, and free. And with that, the journey continued.